7 incredible tank battles. The battlefield was a cauldron of fire and steel. Smoke choked the air, and the deafening roar of tank engines mixed with the relentless percussion of gunfire. 7 battles, each more intense than the last, would determine the fate of nations and the men who fought in them. The heat was unbearable, the sand blinding. Captain Aaron Mitchell peered through his scope, sweat trickling down his brow. His M1 Abrams tank had orders to engage an elite enemy force hidden within the dunes of the Arabian desert. The enemy's T-90 tanks moved like phantoms in the swirling sandstorm, but Mitchell had an ace up his sleeve: thermal imaging. The battle began with a missile strike that barely missed his tank. He barked orders, and his gunner retaliated with a precise shot, sending an enemy tank into a fiery explosion. But it was far from over. The enemy had them surrounded. Just as Mitchell thought they were doomed, a squadron of Allied helicopters roared in, turning the tide in a matter of minutes. But the cost was high. His best friend, Lieutenant Harris, didn't make it out. Deep in the frozen wastelands of Siberia, Russian commander Viktor Sokolov led his T-80 battalion in a desperate bid to hold a strategic bunker. The enemy's Leopards advanced like spectral figures in the snowstorm, their engines growling like beasts in the night. Sokolov knew the terrain would be his advantage. He ordered his tanks to lure the enemy into a valley filled with unstable ice. When the first Leopard rolled onto the frozen river, Sokolov's tanks opened fire. The explosions shattered the ice, plunging the enemy's steel behemoths into the icy depths. Victory was his, but not without loss. His closest friend had been on the wrong side of an explosion. In the dense, suffocating jungles of Vietnam, Sergeant Daniel Clark's M48 Patton was a lone survivor after an ambush decimated his unit. The enemy's Soviet-supplied T-55s prowled the undergrowth, hunting him down. Clark knew staying put was suicide. He used the jungle to his advantage, laying traps with explosives and misleading enemy scouts with decoy movements. When an enemy tank rumbled into position, he ordered a precise heat round into its weak underbelly. One by one, he picked them off until reinforcements arrived. Clark survived, but the horror of watching his comrades burn in their tanks would haunt him forever. On the outskirts of Berlin during World War II, Lieutenant Franz Richter found himself in a desperate defense against the advancing Red Army. His Panther tank was one of the last defenders of a crumbling city. As darkness fell, the Soviets unleashed a relentless wave of T-34s. Richter's crew fought with the desperation of men with no escape. One by one, his fellow tanks were picked off, but Richter's skill kept him alive. He ambushed enemies from alleyways, used ruined buildings as cover, and turned Berlin's streets into a labyrinth of death. But in the end, a lucky shot immobilized his tank. He was captured, a hero of a lost war. In the Korean War, Lieutenant Kim Jae-sung faced an impossible mission: hold a bridge with his lone M26 Pershing against an advancing column of Chinese T-34s. Kim's crew was outnumbered 10-1. His only hope was using the terrain and a small squad of infantry. As the first tank crossed, Kim fired, destroying it instantly. The Chinese tanks hesitated, giving his men time to set up explosives along the bridge. The enemy pressed forward, but just as they reached the center, Kim gave the order: detonate. The explosion sent the bridge crumbling into the river, taking the enemy with it. Kim had won, but he was left with a single round in his cannon and the knowledge that tomorrow another battle would come. In the mountains of Afghanistan, modern warfare met old tactics. Major Lisa Carter's M1 Abrams was part of a convoy escorting supplies when the Taliban launched a coordinated attack with stolen Soviet tanks. The canyon became a death trap. RPGs rained down, and the convoy was pinned. Carter made a bold decision: use the enemy's own tactics against them. She maneuvered her tank into a choke point and ordered air support. As the enemy moved in for the kill, F-16s screamed overhead, unleashing precision hellfire. The battle ended in flames, but Carter knew they had barely survived. The year was 2045. Captain Diego Morales led his platoon of next-gen cybernetic tanks in a final battle against rogue AI-controlled war machines. The world had changed, and war was now a fight between man and machine. The AI tanks had superior firepower, but they lacked human instinct. Morales used every trick in the book: ambushes, deception, and old-school maneuver warfare. His final move was a suicide charge, baiting the AI into a kill zone where hidden EMP mines disabled them in one fell swoop. As the dust settled, Morales stood victorious, but he knew humanity had won only a brief respite. The machines would adapt. The war was far from over. 7 battles, 7 warriors, each one fighting for survival, for their comrades, and for something greater than themselves. The echoes of their battles would live on in history, reminders that in the chaos of war, it is courage, sacrifice, and sheer will that define victory. I've crafted a suspenseful story with strong character development and a thrilling climax across 7 epic tank battles. Let me know if you'd like any refinements.